Welcome to this podcast, Holistic Creators, where we share our unique and universal stories about shaping the future for the 4 Ps: people, planet, purpose, and profit. My name is Swanette. I'm a mental coach and your host of this show. My intention for this show is to inspire you on your path to a holistic future. So welcome. Welcome to my podcast, Holistic Creators. My name is Swanette and I'm your host. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Whitehouse. Michael is a guy who knows a guy. In 2014, he came to Groton, Connecticut, knowing no one at all. A year later, after diving into networking with both feet, he was a major connector in the local community. In 2020, he went global and began connecting entrepreneurs, investors, speakers, and others around the world to people they need to know. He offers his services as a network concierge, making connections and building strategy alliance around the world. He is the host of the Daily Morning Motivator podcast and the Guy Who Knows a Guy interview podcast. And I'm so happy that I know to get the guy to know. Welcome to my podcast.
All right. Well, thank you. It's great to be here. And you pronounce Groton correctly, which is always good for people who are not from here. Many people say Groton, so good job not saying Groton.
So I'm here in the moment in Madeira, so I don't even know where you exactly are located. But as you work
Groton, Connecticut.
Yeah. So as you work internationally, the world is becoming small. So we can speak around the world with each other.
Yes.
Due to technology. So thank you for being on my podcast today from the US.
Thank you. Yeah, I like to say in 2020, I became unmoored in time and space. I think a lot of people had the sense of being unmoored in time, where, March to April took about 14 months, and then the next 3 months took about 2 weeks. But I was able to, by moving online and networking online, suddenly I was no longer limited to the little county I lived in, but I was now networking on the earth and could connect along, interests and motivation, as opposed to just who happened to live within 40 miles of me, which was a huge game changer and huge up-leveling.
Yeah. So what I see in the last 2 years during this pandemic, people on the one hand became more isolated in their places, but on the other hand, as a lot more people figured out how to use technology. Also, they were on the other hand able to speak with people all around the world. So there were kind of these two ways to go. Like being isolated at home, but opening to the world. So I totally get what you're speaking about. It was about the same for me. Like being on a tiny island. Now I can speak to everyone around the world. And so. Tell me a little bit, what are you exactly doing? You're connecting people and being a networking concierge. This really sounds like a super interesting job you're doing. So give us a little bit.
I think so. I often say when people are like, I don't know if I could do that. And I say, people pay me to introduce them to people. That's not a real job. So if I can do this, you can do whatever it is you're dreaming about. So the way I came across it, as you mentioned the story, in 2014, I moved to Groton knowing absolutely no one. And I knew, I'd done some networking before. I kind of knew the principles. And I knew I needed a network, so I jumped in whole hog. I went to every business after hours, business before hours, business during hours, ribbon cutting, hair cutting, line cutting. If there were people getting together, I was there meeting people, ignorance on fire. I didn't know how to do it, but I was going to do a lot of it. And so because I was doing that, in some ways I had what seemed like a disadvantage. I didn't know anyone, but it was an asset, because when you know nobody, you got to turn it up to 11. There's nothing holding you back. And before I knew it, I was a connector locally. And then we went online. I just did the same thing in that virtual space around the world. I was no longer limited to who was nearby. And so I could make connections all over and, work at a higher level. And so my initial thought, so I wrote this book, The Guy Who Knows a Guy, which is how it started with the book, and then the brand stuck to me. So I know a bit about networking. I know a lot about networking. I know how to build a network. I know how to actually recently came up with the concept of a talk, which is how to network without ever talking to a stranger, which is not actually that difficult, but I can totally teach someone to do it. I can also teach someone to be a super connector, even if they don't know anybody yet. You can't do both. You have to either know somebody or talk to strangers. You can't not know anybody and not talk to strangers. But so I realized I could teach this stuff. Like, oh, I'll be a coach and I'll make courses and I'll train all this stuff. And what I realized was networking takes work, and people are less interested in paying to learn a skill that's then going to require a lot of work. But some very smart people pointed out to me that people will pay for the work to be done for them. They'll pay for results. And I know a lot of people, and I got a lot of connections. And what if you charge for introductions? You know, your program was they pay you whatever it might be, and you connect them to the people they're looking for. And once I had that thought, I mean, that was mid-November. By December, I was starting to zero in on, first I looked at speakers, and then that sort of shifted to joint ventures, which kind of includes certain types of speaking. And is joint ventures where I really niched in and got 3 clients basically signed up in 3 weeks, because I talked to them. I told them what I do, or they knew what I did, and they were introduced to me. And yeah, I don't sell my services. Like I don't close anybody. I tell them what I do, and then they say, how can we work together? And I tell them what it costs and where to sign up. And they do. But it's because the people I'm working with, one introduction could be worth $10, $30, $50, $100,000 because they know how to do joint ventures. They know how to leverage someone else's audience or someone else's resources or someone else's program. So if I make 10 introductions for them and 2 or 3 of them are decent, they're getting a 10, 20, 50x return on what they pay me. I'm starting to do more, I guess, joint venture type relationships where I get a percentage of what they make, because I've realized if they're getting a 50x return, I should probably be involved in that as well. But that's the idea, is I'm out there networking all the time. And I settled on this because no matter what else I try to do, I just network more. Be like, oh, I should make a course. I don't have any time to make the course. I got 30 hours of meetings on my calendar. Oh, I should do a coaching program. I don't have time to make a coaching program. I got 30 hours of meetings on my calendar. And that's what I do. And I could either try to change my nature, or I could figure out a way to make my nature a business. And that's what I did. And that's where it's really finding success.
Yeah, for a lot of people, networking is really something like, oh God, I have to go to a networking meeting. I have to pitch myself. Okay, I can stand there with some people drinking a wine. That's fine. But like the idea behind is really to become visible somehow. Mm-hmm. And from my own experience, okay, I like to connect with people. So for me, it's easy, but I see other people that are really standing there in the corner. Okay, I'm here because I have to connect, but I feel that I can't even do that. So, yeah, yep. It is even more easy if you say, okay, I take you at the hand, and I know somebody who can I introduce to, so that yep. The first step, like the barrier that is in front of people, is not there anymore.
Yeah. And I think the challenge people run into, and actually I recently did a training for a group of bankers, really outgoing and extroverted people, so a group of bankers who by their nature aren't people who are like, yeah, let's go to a party and meet a lot of people. And a question I got from a lot of them was, how do I start a conversation with a stranger? How do we break the ice? And I answered, and what their question literally was what do you say to start a conversation? I said, I'm going to answer your question, and it's not going to be what you're looking for. But the answer is, hi, I'm Michael Whitehouse. We haven't met yet. That's my pickup line. And so now you have that, and it's of no use to you, because the reason I can do that is because I know where the conversation is going to go. People are awkward starting the conversation because they don't know where they're going to take it after hi. So they're like, am I going to try to sell them something? That feels awkward. I don't even, if they're a banker, they don't necessarily have something to sell. So what am I trying to find out? What is the purpose here? And the solution I shared with them that I find very effective is I go in with one goal, and that goal is to make at least one introduction for this person. So I want to solve a problem or make an introduction, or solve a problem by making an introduction. And if that's the goal I have in mind, that solves the what are we going to talk about problem. So when I'm thinking about what other questions what questions should I ask to get this conversation going, I don't have a list of questions, because instead of having like a recipe I follow, I have a destination. And that destination is know enough about them to solve a problem or make an introduction. And so the questions just come naturally to mind, because you've got that purpose in mind. And if all you do is make an introduction for them and nothing else happens, they're going to remember you as the best conversation they had at that event, because everyone else is like, hi, I'm an insurance salesman. Do you have insurance to protect your family? Oh, God. Whereas they might not even necessarily know what your business is, but they know that you're a helpful person, and they see you at an event again later. They're going to want to talk to you first because, hey, you got any more of those solutions and introductions? Because that was pretty good last time, and you didn't try to pitch me anything. Plus, if you are selling something, it works a lot better if you let them tell you what all their problems are, and one of those problems is solved by your product. Then it's not a sale. Then it's a, oh, would you like to solve that? Well, yes, I would. Well, funny you should mention that. I just so happen to be the one who solves it. Let's set up a time to talk later. So it eliminates the need for having that, like, how do you start? What do you ask? What do you talk about? Don't worry about what you're talking about. Just solve their problem, and it'll all work out to itself. And most people who are polite will then turn that around and be like, who can I introduce you to? Thanks for doing that. How can I help you? What problem of yours can I solve? And then you're in control of the conversation. They think you're awesome, and you're now a great networker.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I also see is that if you ask questions and listening, they will tell you what they are about, where they struggle, why are they here, what is their interest, what is their passion. So you get to know people very easy by just asking them what they are about. And then, of course, if you already have a network, as you do have, I think people will pop up in your mind like, oh, this could be an interesting person to connect to, or perhaps he has some information for him. And so it's already getting like bringing people together in your mind. I can imagine like it happens.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and so some people may hear that and be like, well, that's cool for you with the network, Mr. Networking guy. I don't have a network. How do I do it? And I always tell the story about early on, when I knew probably 20 or 30 people in the whole county. And I went to a networking event, and I'd already started the habit of saying, who would you like to meet? Who would be a valuable connection for you? And I went to this one event, and the first person I met happened to be a realtor, a real estate agent. Then I don't remember who the second was. They're not important to the story. But the third person, I said, who would you like to be connected to? Who are you looking to meet here? And they said, I'm looking to meet realtors. And I said, funny you should mention that. Do you know that guy over there? And they said, no, I don't. And I said, well, you are about to. And I made the introduction. I knew 3 people in the room. I introduced the first one to the third one and made a connection. And that happens surprisingly often, that you'll have that opportunity. I had someone just the other day, 2 days ago, reach out to me and ask me if I knew a software as a service, a SaaS developer, someone who wrote the software. And I thought, and honestly, I probably do, but one didn't come to mind. The next day, I was talking to someone I've been introduced to, and one of the products they had, one of their major products, was a SaaS product. And I said, if you have a SaaS product, you must have a SaaS developer. Who is he? Do you like him? And could you introduce me to him? Like, oh, yeah, he's great. I'd love to introduce you to him. So I not only had got that person, he was now being endorsed by one of his clients, being introduced to me, and it solved the solution. And this is without knowing one already and without looking for one. It just happened to come up in the course of a conversation because I had in my mind, I need to find a SaaS developer. And anyone can do that as long as you're having conversations with people. I like to think of when I'm networking, people give me missions. And of course, now I'm doing it professionally. I mostly do it for my clients. I don't put a lot of time into it for people who aren't paying me, because otherwise I found I was spending all my time on helping my friends out, making connections, which, is good, but not a good business model. But for folks who, if you're in a different business, whatever you're doing, coaching, speaking, real estate, whatever, that's where you make your money. But when somebody says, hey, I'm looking to meet a SaaS developer, an attorney, whatever, you take that as a mission. And like, okay, I need to find an attorney who specializes in, underwater basket weaving companies. And then each conversation you have, hey, do you happen to know an attorney who focuses in underwater basket weaving companies? And probably within 2 or 3 conversations, someone will be like, actually, I do. My brother-in-law, or my attorney does that, or whatever. And everyone you talk to will see you making connections. So you get to be known as a connector because you're walking the walk. You're not just like, oh, I'm a connector. You don't even tell them you're a connector. You just say, hey, I've got someone who's looking. I'd like to make an introduction. I don't know that person. Could you help? And you're going to grow your network in the process of helping people. And you become a connector, pretty easily in that process.
Okay, I can understand that if you are on a networking event or on a conference, you really meet people in person. So you have a chance to stand beside them and start talking to them and introducing yourself and then listening to their own problems or challenges or their needs. But how does this work digitally? So at the moment, I can, if I can imagine, like, I'm sitting here alone on my desk. So how can I start networking with people when I'm not connected in real life or in like the analog way?
Yeah. So same way, but kind of easier. So let me go that SaaS developer story and give some details of the communication methods. So the fellow who was looking, I'd never met in person. He's actually in the same state as me. He's not that far away, but we've still never met in person. I think we met over Facebook in the first place. He sent me a Facebook message saying, hey, guy who knows a guy, which a lot of conversations start that way. Hey, guy who knows a guy, do you know a SaaS developer? And I said, no, but let me see if I can, or I can't think of one, but let me see what I can figure out. The next conversation, the story was an introduction that was made to me by one of my clients who lives in Mexico to somebody he knows in Australia. I spoke to the guy in Australia. He has a SaaS product, which he's rolling out in Australia, the UK, and the United States. He's going to introduce me to his developer, who I think is in the Midwest, Tennessee or something like that. And we're introduced by email. I have not met any of these people face to face. And there are plenty of analogs. So if you do want to, meet strangers in an easy environment without having to cold approach them or send LinkedIn messages, which you can do that too. There are a lot of fun, positive, high energy networking events that you can attend. If you're a speaker, there's a Speakers Playhouse, which I believe is where we met, if I'm not mistaken. The Frank Yagan runs the Networking Hub, which is a monthly Zoom meeting. There's Shared Connections is another one that I'm involved in. There's different networking groups like Success Champions Networking, which is local chapters in different places around the U.S. I think they're expanding to Canada, the UK, and Mexico fairly soon. And it's it's virtual, so it's really easy for them to expand. They just need to find people in those areas, and they start chapters. So that's an area where you work with the same people, get to know them a bit, so it doesn't have the awkwardness of having to approach a lot of strangers. But there's a lot of places, virtual networking where it's breakout rooms. So you go in, there's 100 people there, and they break you out into a room of 5 or 2 or 6 or whatever, and different ways they work, and they're built to facilitate making connections. There's also Facebook groups, and those can be pretty hit or miss. A lot of the groups the biggest groups are very open, so anyone can get in there, which means you can get in there, and so can everyone else. So they don't always have the highest quality people, but the cream rises to the top. So you join some of these big groups, you ignore 90% of the junk that floats by, and then somebody makes an insightful post, and you're like, we should talk. You seem smart. And then, you comment on their post, just send them a Facebook message. There's different environments where people go to network, to make connections. They want to make connections too. They go where, the fish where the fish are. And the great thing with networking is the worst that happens with a bad networking connection is you have a slightly awkward conversation, you never talk to them again. It can't go worse than that. I mean, I guess it could go worse than that if they're a really awful person. But basically, the worst of the deal is like, I've certainly had a bunch of conversations where it's been, that's 30 minutes, I'll never get back. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad compared to all the amazing conversations that I've had. And a lot of these events, the Facebook groups, they're free to join. The events, some of the best events. And if people reach out to me, I know a few of them. There's a fellow named Robert Butwin, who is he's been networking actively and effectively longer than I've been alive. So he is pretty consummate networker, and he has assembled a list of networking events around on the internet, virtual networking events. He's got, I think there's 50 of them. And he can send you this PDF, or If people contact me, I can send them his PDF, which he's perfectly happy to share it around because at the bottom is all his contact information. He's got a whole networking vault and whatnot. But so he has aggregated a directory of networking events. So the way I stumbled my way into virtual networking was started going to the groups, made some connections. I'm in a local BNI chapter. When they all went online, I started visiting them around the world, and go to an event, meet some people, talk to them. They give you some leads. Hey, check out this other group I'm part of. Go to that, meet some people. They give you some leads. Hey, check out this other group I'm part of. And just one thing leads to the next, and next, and next, and that's how you can build that up from not being able to leave your house. Yeah, I've been to I've been to a couple local chamber events, but honestly, those aren't at the same level as the place I'm networking for my main business now. I go there because I want to connect to my local community still. But I've been to one like real live event since March 2020, and I made a couple connections, but they weren't life changing. They were decent, but all the amazing connections I've made have been through virtual events, through Facebook groups, and then once I got started there, through introductions.
And do you think that it needs a certain kind of personality to do networking? Like if someone is really shy and feels like, or even perhaps being afraid of speaking to strangers, do you think that it needs a certain personality to go into networking?
No, it needs an attitude. And that attitude has to be, you want to help people. You have to have made the commitment that people who meet you should come out of it better than they went in. And if you have that, you can be a good networker. So a lot of people who are shy tend to be more organized, structured, better at systems, because while I spend all my time running around talking to people, smiling, being all charismatic, I'm terrible at systems. So like when my friend said, hey, do you know a SaaS developer? I'm like, I bet I do. I can't think of who it is because I don't have the systems and a database, and I've kind of got like some spreadsheets and my email, all these. I have a lot of people I've talked to, and usually I can be like, okay, I think his name started with an L. Let me search my emails and see if I can find it. But so what I have in extroversion, I make up for in not having systems. As my business grows, I look forward to hiring people who do, to be assistants, to like set up those systems, so I can just be like, hey, assistant, I need this. Pull it out of my database. Not there yet. On the flip side, if you don't have my extroversion and bombacity, and you're a little more low key, but you're organized, and you can keep track of everyone you meet and what value they can offer through introductions, and you set up a HubSpot or a database or a spreadsheet or a system of spreadsheets, or I don't even know what you set up. I don't know how these things work. I mean, I do technically, but if you set up some kind of system where you can, at your fingertips, have all the connections they need, then you can be, people have a conversation with a totally monotone person who solves all their problems. And in fact, conceivably, you don't even necessarily need to be getting on calls with everyone. I mean, I think it'd be difficult to build trust if you couldn't at least get on, a Zoom call or a phone call to kind of humanize yourself to them. But, once you've had a call to just kind of talk and share what you do and learn a bit about them, you can conduct a lot of the conversation through Messenger, email, text formats, whatever's more comfortable. Because if there's introductions I need or connections I need, I'm not going to be like, I need to talk to you. I need to see your face to ask for your help. If Messenger is the way, and honestly, I've gotten to the point where I have much less time. I used to say I'll get a half-hour call with anyone. Now I can't do it anymore. I ran out of half hours. I ran out of 15 minutes. So now if somebody needs a quick thing, shoot me an email, send me a messenger, a message. And if they're like, hey, I need an introduction. Okay, cool. I know someone, here it is. Or I don't know someone off the top of my head, can't help you. The conversation can be that. And you don't need to be very extroverted at all. You don't need to be very people-ish at all to make those connections. It's all about providing that value one way or another. I think a lot of people have this idea, the image you have when you think of a networker is that guy who's going to the event and be like, hey, how you doing? Yeah, here's a card. I get you a glass of champagne. And that's one way to do it. But especially now in the virtual space, you can do it from the comfort of your own home. And And you may need to do things that are a little bit uncomfortable if you really hate talking to people. There's got to be some talking to people, but you can set up your office the way you want it to, and you can have the plant in the corner, and you can meditate between calls and have your essential oil diffuser, whatever it is you need. You're in your space, and you're connecting to them through the screen with the safety of this wall between you, and you can still be a very effective networker and very effectively help people. And then the other thing I will say is it's very important to know what you want as well, because it's really easy once you get into that service mindset to just serve. I got to this place where I'd be making introductions to people, and this one makes $50,000, and this one gets $50,000, and this one gets a nice email saying thank you. And I could not pay my bills with nice emails that say thank you. So know who it is, and you can do it almost without having to ask. You say, how can I help you? You help them in that way. You solve their problem. Most people will reciprocate and be like, so how can I help you? You should have an answer to that question. Know who you're looking to meet, know who would benefit your business to have. And the mindset point to that, always assume that's a magic wand question. Don't think about who they know, who you think they know, who you can reach. Like if you're looking to get a one-on-one conversation with Gary Vaynerchuk, how can I help you? Do you happen to have a connection to Gary Vaynerchuk? Because I'd love to get a conversation with him. I think we could do a good joint venture. And if not, I'm looking for really anyone in the social media marketing space. Something like that. Shoot for the stars. You never know. They might be like, well, actually, I have clients. Some of my clients, they know Richard Branson. They know Bob Proctor. They know these people who, if I had a good reason to connect with them, which unfortunately I don't, someday I hope to. If I had a good reason to connect to them, I could say, hey, I'd like to talk to them. I have this thing that I think would be beneficial to both of us. Could you make that connection? And that's the, you can ask for those big introductions, but then they're really going to need to go like, I can. Why? And not what's in it for me, but what's in it for them. When I reach out to this hard to reach person I know who will take my calls, I better have a good reason why he should meet with this person he's never heard of. And if he does, if you're like, hey, yeah, I know someone who's got a product that would make the fuel efficiency of the SpaceX rockets 3% higher and save $1 million. I think Elon Musk wants to talk to me. Oh, all right. Yeah, I know Elon Musk. You'd probably be interested in hearing about that. But if it's just like, I think it'd be super cool to talk to him, you're not going to get that introduction. you need to have a win-win reason to do that.
Yeah, so it's always interesting to see that there are only some people in between the person you want to reach. Sometimes only one person in between, that could be you, and sometimes two or perhaps three, but it is already stated that there is always a connection you will find to reach one person. And you mentioned, for example, LinkedIn before. We have a German version that is Xing, that you can see already how the connection between the people are. So if you say, I want to reach out to Mr. X, then you can see the people in between, and you can ask the next one, okay, can you introduce me to the one in between? And then you're already there. So this is a great tool if you want to use that already to get an idea about how far away people can be. And
absolutely,
yeah, of course. You need a good reason to reach out to people just to say hi because you want to say hi. Yeah.
An interesting thing I find, which I think is a mindset issue, is there are people who have come close to the successful realm, or they're in it. They've been successful, or they know people are successful, and they understand anything is possible. So when somebody sets a virtual coffee with me, there's a set of questions, and one of them is, who would be one introduction that would change your life? And I can immediately tell their mindset from the answer to this question, because if it is, this person, because we could do a joint venture and be very powerful, and here's why, I know they're in that success mindset. They've experienced it. They've seen it. They know anything is possible. But more often than not, it's, Oprah, because it would be an amazing conversation. I think I could learn something from her. They're not expecting me to introduce them. They don't think it's possible. So they're just wishing and dreaming. And I try to encourage people to to really, ask that as what the person taught me transformational coaching, this idea of a magic wand question. You have a magic wand that can do anything. What do you want? And when I coach people, I find I have to ask it twice, because the first time I ask, I say, okay, perfect outcome. What is your ideal life? Magical result. You can do anything you want. I never forget, I was talking to someone who's religious. So I use I said, God comes down to you, hands you a blank check prayer, like already signed, whatever you want, approved, God, whatever you write on there is going to happen. And she's like, well, I want a job that pays at least $16 an hour. And I want it to be at least 35 hours a week. And I want, things, very practical next step things. And I'm like, okay, let's try this again. The almighty God who created the universe just gave you a blank check and you're asking for a $16 an hour job. She's like, oh. And it wasn't just her. Almost everyone I ask this question to does this. They think whatever their next step is, maybe 2 steps ahead, but they don't think magical, blank check from God. How would you want your life to be? And if you can't see more than a step ahead, then you fixate on, I need a $16 an hour job. Well, if you're fixated on that, when you're offered an $18 an hour job, you're like, oh, that's not what I'm looking for. Because your subconscious takes that instruction and filters. And I need a $16 an hour job, $16 an hour job. And you see an 18, your subconscious is like, nope, that's not what we want. We said 16. Pass it on. But if you're focused on instead, I want to make enough money so I'm not worried about my bills anymore. One of my goals years ago was all my bills on auto pay. So I got a system, money goes in, money comes out. I just check it once a month and I'm like, yep, everything's good. Everything balances. And I'm there now, because that was one of my goals, all the bills on auto pay. And I remember when we set that goal, I was like, wow, this is like winning the lottery kind of goal. Like, crazy, all the bills on auto pay. But I focused on it long enough and we got there, and it wasn't even like I set a strategy and said, we're going to do A and then B and then C. It was just someday that's going to happen. Someday that's going to happen somehow. And subconscious got set to it and it worked in that direction. So, you really need to be able to focus on what that big picture is, what the big outcome is. And so if your big outcome is, I want my business to be partnered with some of the billion-dollar businesses out there. And so at some point, I'm going to meet Elon Musk and we're going to have a serious conversation about how we might work together. And that's going to happen. I just need to figure out who's going to make that introduction for me. You approach networking very differently than if it's like, oh, I could never talk to those people. I'm just this little guy down here. He doesn't want to talk to me. He's too big. When you realize they're all just people. And to some degree, for me, it was when I realized that most of the people I spend most of my time talking to happen to be millionaires. I don't seek out millionaires. I like to talk to successful people and learn from them. And then when I learn from them, they like me because I'm kind of a cool guy and focus on how can I help them. And then I talk to them more and they introduce me to their friends who are, of course, millionaires because they're millionaires. And before I knew it, I'm like, I hang out with a lot of millionaires now. That really wasn't that hard. They're just people who happen to have a lot of money and a lot of success and are abundance-minded people who want to serve others. So they introduce me to others. And I'm like, well, if I could do that, who can't I meet? No one, I guess. So let's keep this going. And now some of them are my clients because they know that I can connect them. Yeah, my ideal client knows how to network. They know how to do it. They know everything I know. Maybe not every technique, but they know. They either don't want to or they don't have time. Like, yeah, I could do this myself. I know how to do it, but I'm too busy. I'm doing this and that, the other thing. I'm launching deals and making, doing these things and building courses. And I don't have time to be at the events, making the meetings. But you do because you love doing it and can't do anything else. So they like to have me do it for them. This isn't like the web designer who only works with clients who don't know how to design websites. I only work with people who know how to network. Because if they don't, then they think I'm a wizard and they expect magical results. And I don't want to work for people who don't understand what I do.
Yeah, so one thing you already said right now, having a big picture, like having a vision, how your could look like when it is for you the best way. And then the like synchronicities can appear and people get to know each other, and this can be made happen. Like having a paycheck from God sounds good. Like whatever you want, you will get that. But this also means that you have to have an abundant mindset, that you really have to think about yourself, that you can be in this kind of league playing with these guys and not playing small.
Yeah. Well, and the key thing is there's no leagues. You know, years ago, when the United States was founded, for our U.S. viewers, written into the Constitution is that we don't have an aristocracy. You know, it's not like anyone would say, well, I don't talk to peasants because I'm a nobleman. You know, there's no aristocracy in the U.S., and I'm pretty sure that the aristocracy that remains in Europe is not really strict. You know, there's not a lot of people saying, I'm an earl, I won't talk to you, right? So like there's no formal structure. Like we're all fundamentally equal. Now, some of us are equal with very large bank accounts and driving very nice cars. But I realized this even when I was networking locally. You know, I'd meet the CEO of the local casino, which, to their credit, our local casinos are very good neighbors. They are not what you think of a local casino. But, you know, the CEO who I learned at one point he lived in a $1.1 million condo. So, you know, he's making a few bucks. I don't know what his salary is, but probably a lot. And in the conversation, we talked about his dog and I think maybe his back issues, like some back pain stuff. I think we may have talked about some hobbies. I think it was like sailing or something like that. Like we just talked about stuff. It wasn't like, well, let's talk about big money things. And you don't even understand the words I'm using, little poor person. Like we just talked about stuff. If I didn't know he was the CEO, and it was such a mundane conversation. And I realized, you know, rich people have the same things going on as broke people in their lives. You know, they got relationships, they got kids they're worried about, they got pets, they got hobbies, they like watching movies. They're just people. Sometimes they're just really busy people, but they're just people. And so there is no league. Another lesson that taught me this, of course, too, was when I was a younger man, before I met my wife, who was, of course, amazing and completely out of my league. I met this woman at an event, and my first thought on meeting her was like, dang, she is definitely out of my league. Lucky for me, no one had told her what league she was in. And we ended up, you know, dating somewhat soon after. And I realized, like, while I was, you know, look, she didn't know that. You know, it's not like somebody comes and says, all right, you are in the class 3 league. So anyone who's in class 1 or 2, just ignore them. They're below you. People only know what league you're in by how you present yourself. So if you approach them and like, hey, I'd like to connect, I'd like to talk about some things. They don't know, you know, they're not running a background check. They're not doing a credit report. They're not, you know, maybe they'll check your website, but there's some really impressive people who have no website. So if you approach them with confidence and say, yeah, there's a couple of, now, if you approach them like, I'd like to connect and see what we have in common. Okay, that shows you're not in their league. Certain people are just not going to respond to that. But if you approach and say, I love what your company's doing, especially that thing you did in France back in 2017, amazing program. I got a couple things that I think might interest you. I'd love to have a conversation. Or if you don't have anything to offer, maybe you're just getting started. I love what you guys do, especially that thing you did in France in 2017. I'm actually just getting started. It would change my life if I could get 15 minutes of your time just to get a little bit of your advice. Would you be willing to do that? And some people won't. Some will say, you know, I wish I could. I'm just too busy. And others would be like, you know what? Sure. You know, talk to my secretary. We'll book something. And they may be booking it for 4 months from now. But, you know, if you approach someone and say, I think you could be a mentor for me, or I think a short conversation with you would be amazing and valuable, then they're surprisingly open to that. I actually recently made an introduction to someone who created a I think 8-figure, 9-figure, very large franchise company. He's franchised it out to zillions of people, very successful, doing it for decades. And I met someone who's just starting a franchise. And I said, would you mind talking to her, giving her some advice, answering any questions she has? Because she's at the beginning and you're, towards the end. And he's like, I love talking to people like that. Not just I'm willing to, I can find the time. He's at the point of his life where that is his favorite conversation, is talking to someone who's getting started. So he can share that and tell them, okay, here's the 3 pitfalls that I hit that almost blew my business. Don't do those things, or here's something I learned. It took me 10 years to learn it. And part of it's that, we think if you go back and talk to your past self, what would you warn them? What would you tell them? Well, you can't do that for yourself, but you can do it for someone else. And it feels almost as satisfying to warn the next generation coming up of, yeah, okay, so definitely don't do this thing that I did, because, oh boy, that did not go well. And now you won't do it because I told you. Or you will do it. And when you do it, you'll hear my voice in your head being like, oh, that's what he was talking about. But people who are successful, I would say people who are truly successful, not just people who have money, because money does not mean successful. People who are truly successful and have happiness and abundance are almost always willing to share it because they feel obligated to. They feel, I have been blessed. How can I pass this on to others?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is also my experience speaking to people. If I ask for some help or advice, these people are always willing to tell their story and also share the pitfalls, but also what they have done that made them successful. They are happy to share their story and give advice or even be a mentor. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's about the abundance mindset. If you think, if you're in that scarcity mindset, you're like, I know what I know and I'm not going to tell you. For me, I've probably, I think I actually may have already said on this interview everything you really need to know to do everything I do. If you're like, I want to be like that guy, let's re-listen to the interview a few times, and it's pretty much all there. And anything that's not there is in here. You can have this for $10 online, or you can email me and I'll send you a PDF for free. And you'll then know everything you just know to do what I do. Like, there's no great secrets in it. I'm thinking about creating a course to teach people who don't want to be uncomfortable networking how to do it. But the value in that wouldn't be that knowledge. It would be that it would probably take a little more time. There might be more like a mastermind component or something like that. But I get no benefit out of hoarding my networking secrets. In fact, if I teach more people to network, to build more relationships and create more abundance, the world literally gets richer. You hear terms like job creator. If I teach you how to network, you network with someone else, you create a joint venture that launches a product, and then you hire 5 people. I'm a job creator because I taught you to do the thing that literally created jobs out of nothing. Jeff Bezos is rich because he created something out of nothing. He didn't take his billions of dollars from people. He created billions of dollars of value because Amazon, now, it changed the market in different ways, and we can get into that. But fundamentally, it created value because the time you're not spending in a store or driving from store to store looking for something because you can get on Amazon, you now have that time back because Amazon exists. That's value that was created that didn't exist before. So if I can share my knowledge and someone can use that knowledge to make more connections and be more abundant, then if I come across that, and even if they watch this interview, they learn this stuff, they forget where they learned it, I don't get any credit for it, but then I come across them 5 years later in a conversation and they're successful because of what they learned from me. Even if they don't remember it's from me, they're more likely to be a good networking partner. They're more likely to make introductions. They're going to know more people. They're going to have more value to offer. And so even if there's not a direct benefit, and now I would prefer if they talk in that conversation, say, I saw an interview with you 5 years ago. It changed my life. And this is all thanks to you. I owe you everything. How can I help you? That'd be great. I don't mind. So, if you're learning from me, write my name down because we may meet someday. And someday I may ask for a favor. No, I'm not the Godfather. But just creating abundance in the world creates more abundance for everybody. And there's some things like, the Coca-Cola secret formula. Okay, you got to keep that secret because if someone can copy that, they can copy the product. But frankly, even if somebody got their hands on the Coca-Cola secret formula and they released something that tastes exactly like Coca-Cola, It wouldn't be Coca-Cola, because Coca-Cola is some sugar water with some herbs and spices in it attached to a giant brand. And in fact, even when they changed the formula, fun fact, Diet Coke is the new Coke formula. And if you know the story about Coke, how they changed the formula in the 80s and then changed it back because everyone got so upset that it changed. Well, when they made Diet Coke, it's based on the new Coke formula. They didn't change it back. There's nothing changed back to. So Diet Coke is actually the diet version of new Coke, which doesn't exist anymore. But nobody realizes it because it's all in the branding. And it's not just about the secret herbs and spices that go into it. It is about, something bigger than that. And something more powerful than that somebody, you couldn't steal their brand. How would you have to take the whole company? So, same thing. If someone runs around and starts calling themselves the guy who knows the guy, that's kind of like if they start calling themselves Michael Whitehouse. Like, then it's just confusing. You're not necessarily getting anything. You just confusing people. But the knowledge is, by sharing that, it just makes everyone richer and means I'm living in a richer world, which good for me.
Yeah, but what I especially see in like being a networker or like me being a coach, this is people's business. Mm-hmm. So even if someone comes up with the same tools or the same system, we are not changeable like person by person. No? It is people want to speak to you or they want to speak to me because we are unique. So there is no kind of copycat of personality or of individuals. No, we are all unique. So I think this is, we are our own brand by how we behave, what we do, what we know about our experiences we have. So no, there is, Yeah,
I think we pay too much attention to really big companies. So companies like Facebook and Apple, their addressable market is the world. And they're trying to get market penetration, 80%, 90%. For most of us, we're not there. For most of us, the market is infinitely large. My target right now is to have 10 clients. At some point, I may then stretch to 20. Do you think the market's bigger than 20 clients for my networking concierge service? It probably is. I was thinking, I'm involved running a summit. Our target is 10,000 people opting into it, going to the free version of the summit. And I thought about that. I thought about what the size of the entrepreneurial market is. And I realized there could probably be 1,000 summits, each getting 10,000 people, none of whom overlap. And there's enough for everybody for 1,000 summits. Plus, how many free summits can you go to in a year? 3, 4, 5, 6. So, there's so much opportunity out there. And, if you're a coach, maybe you have a group program and you could accommodate 500 people or 1,000 people. Well, so there could be 10,000 of you with no overlaps. And of course, a lot of these programs, you go through it in 2 years and you're done. Like they've gone through everything you have and that's it. And now you're ready to work with a different coach. So that's even more opportunity. So even if somebody copied, your exact program, it might be that somebody will do your program for 2 years or as long as it is. And then when that's over, they want to find someone who does your exact program, but in a different flavor. Someone younger, older, male, female, different country, different background, but teaching basically the same things. One of my clients ran an event called Abundant You 2022, and it's a series of 10-minute talks from all the different guests. And I was listening to it, and some of the things I'm like, this is really profound, and I've heard every single word of this before. A lot of things we're talking about here, abundance mindset and focus on what you want. There's nothing new under the sun, but it was great to hear it again in a different way. And a lot of times it's just, I need a coach who will sit down and talk to me about this. So sometimes, like if you're a new coach, if you're just getting started, you don't have the following, you don't have the systems, and you're still, at the point where maybe you're charging $50 an hour, $100 an hour, $150 an hour, you have a great value in the market because in 5 or 10 years, you may not be doing one-on-one coaching at all, or you'll be doing it for $1,000 an hour, or you'll have, a big complex program. But sometimes you just need someone who's vaguely knowledgeable about how to coach, who can actually talk to you one-on-one. So that coach who's early in their career and has the time to charge $100 an hour or, an accessible amount for another newbie, for someone else who's getting started, hugely valuable. Being in that niche is you're not necessarily underselling yourself. You're filling that role. And then later you fill a different role. And later you fill a different role. Everyone has a place and a value, and there's always that need, no matter what you're doing. It's not just like there's Tony Robbins, there's people who failed to get there. Everyone has a place to be. The world only needs so many Tony Robbinses. We need a lot more people who can get on the ground and put you in a 10-person mastermind, or do a one-on-one coaching, or do a 30-person networking group. And you need a lot of 30-person networking groups to network the world.
Absolutely. So what are people that normally reach out to you? Are these coaches or entrepreneurs? Who are these people?
So a lot of the connections I'm making lately are coaches, course creators, people who are in the joint venture space. So the joint venture, for those not familiar with the concept, probably most people have heard the phrase joint venture, like, so it's like a venture together, joint. And for a year, I tried and failed, and just, and I was going to do it the way you invent the light bulb, 8,000 tries, and finally one of them works. And then finally I met people who actually taught me the details, which really helped. But the core of a joint venture is figuring out ways to leverage other people's resources. So the simplest form of that is leveraging someone else's audience, so if two people each have 10,000 person email lists, they promote each other's webinars. So one's got a webinar selling their product, one's got a webinar selling their product. They each promote each other's. And now they both make money. And that's the simplest one. You don't have to worry about like affiliates, money changing hands. I promote you, you promote me, bada bing. It's a little complicated because it helps if you're kind of on the same, if you've got a 1,000 person list, they got a 10,000 person list, the value is going to be a little uneven, but they still might do it just to help out, because if they promote you, you're going to get bigger. There's other things like affiliate partnerships, summits, all kinds of different ways. Being on a podcast is a form of joint venture. I'm providing content to your show. You're providing a stage for me to reach your audience. Win-win. Without your audience, I'd have no one to talk to. Without my content, you wouldn't have anything to share with them. Win-win. So I'm being introduced from one joint venture person to another, because they say, hey, you know how the worst part of this is all the time it takes to meet people? Check this guy out. He does it for you. So that's a lot of the connections I'm making now. But then I also meet a lot of people who are just trying to get started. And for them, I kind of left the door open with what I call an inner circle program. So I set aside 1 hour a week for $47 a month. You can get access to this 1 hour Zoom call. The price is lower than it should be because, and it's kind of hit or miss who shows up. Sometimes no one shows up. Sometimes a bunch of people show up. But it could be for $47 a month, you get an hour with me one-on-one, which is lower than my private coaching rate. But I wanted to have that door open. So if someone's like, yeah, I'm stuck, I need some help, I wanted to create a place where they could come in and I could help this. Now, because of mindset challenges, very few people actually take advantage of this because for whatever reason, they're thinking they're not worthy. They're thinking it's not worth it. They're thinking if it's too cheap, it's not valuable. I don't know why, but I leave that door open so that I never get to the point where I say I'm too big to help the next person coming along. But at the same time, if I offer them time in my calendar, it would just fill my calendar. So that's why I created that space there. But my main focus is people in the joint venture space, people who I can make an introduction to them and they can turn that introduction into value for both of them in the thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands dollar range.
Okay. So if people now are interested because they heard about your offer, where can we reach out to you? Do we have a website, Facebook?
Yes. So the best place to the website, go to guywhoknowsaguy.com. There's no the on the website, so it's just guywhoknowsaguy.com. At the top of that site, you will be able to, you can opt in to get access to my Power 5 networking tips. So I took basically everything in my book, distilled it down to a one-page PDF, although I do encourage you to read the book. It's fun. It's probably the most entertaining book on networking. One of the few books on networking we're actually going to laugh out loud at a few parts of it. At least that's what my readers tell me. So if you just want to learn, like, how do I do this networking thing? Go to the site, get that for free. And then you'll also get some other content from me down the road. If you're interested in the networking concierge side, you're like, oh, I want someone to do this. I could turn introductions into money. I just need more of them. On that same website on the side is you can book an appointment. We can have a call. I can learn about the business, learn about what you do, and see if you're a fit for the program. And I'm in a blessed position. And once you really identify your avatar and your offer, this is where you end up. As I said, I don't sell it. I don't pitch it. I don't close it. I don't say, all right, so you're going to do this now or limited time. Nope. I tell people what it is. I tell people how it works, what it costs. Sometimes we personalize it based on what their business is. And then I say, so the next step, if you want to do it, here's a link to the place to put your credit card in and become a client. And if not, that's cool too, because I don't want to work with anyone who's not 107% interested in working with me. If they're like, well, I don't know. All right, cool. Well, if you do know, let's talk. But if you don't know, you don't know. And we part as friends, and maybe we'll come around again. And a lot of people, maybe they're not ready for it. But I love to have that conversation, just see if it can be a fit. Because for the right person, it can absolutely revolutionize their business. Because now they don't have to do the thing that they don't love doing. And optimally, your business gets to the point where you love doing every part of it and you outsource everything else.
Okay, so I will put the link in the description, and you can see also the website here in the background, and the email address. Yeah, exactly. So you can right now easily reach out to Michael or wait for the link in the description. And yeah, thank you so much already for this conversation. At the end, do you have some tips that you really want to offer to our audience?
So the biggest tip for someone who thinks, oh, being connected would be really cool, but it seems like a lot of work and I don't know how to do it, is that you become a connector the moment you decide to become a connector. Just like my story where I introduced the guy to the realtor in the same room. As soon as you set that mindset of I'm going to make connections, everything else will follow. I mean, you read my book, he's got the rule set. But if you just make that commitment, I'm going to be a connector, you'll figure out the rest, because now you've set your mind to it and the people are out there. You just need to have made the commitment to provide value in that way.
Okay, so thank you so much for being my guest here on the show and sharing all your knowledge and being so inspiring for the audience. Thank you so a lot.
It's been great. Thank you.
Okay, see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening or watching my podcast, Holistic Creators. If you want to know more about how I can help and support you, have a look at my website, spiritualchangemaker.com. You can also join my Facebook group, Spiritual Changemakers Community. Stay tuned for the next episode by subscribing to this channel. And you also can check the previous episodes